Greetings, lifeforms! I'll show you how to build the very basic bioactive terrarium. This video assumes no knowledge of terrarium principles on the viewer's part. It all starts with the container, a little jar with a cork lid in this case. The end result is an open terrarium, but as the moss establishes, it does need consistent humidity, which means putting a lid on it. I will also be using this carbon fiberglass window screen as a barrier between the false bottom and the substrate. Be sure to cut it slightly larger than the container. For the false bottom, I'm going to use small pebbles left over from my previous builds, usually aquarium pebbles, tails of spring for bioactivity, and a wide variety of mosses that I carefully curated and processed. Let me know if you would like to see a moss and plant collection / propagation / quarantine video. Let me know in the comments below. I'm also using this little cork bark as well as some porous stones for color and texture variety. For substrate, I'll be using the classic ABG mix that I got from my local pet store. Enjoy the build!
I'm a nature-loving, tree-hugging, transdimensional entity, currently operating this meat vehicle on an epic journey to explore the microverse.
We start, as these builds often do, with a false bottom. Small pebbles, sand, crushed lumpwood charcoal work best, or even leca balls or lava rocks for larger builds. To assist me with this is my trusted tiny shovel. Tiny shovel, tiny shovel. To assist me, tiny, 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 tiny shovel, yeah. Ooh, a life form! Did you know that this video was made for lifeforms? If you want to keep seeing videos about lifeforms, hit buttons, hit any button. Buttons. The false bottom acts as a water reservoir to keep the excess water separated from the substrate or the soil, keeping the substrate or soil moist but not soggy. This layer also helps aerate the substrate, resulting in a much healthier colony of the tails of spring, as well as a healthy root system for the flora that will eventually call this village of the microverse home. Next is the mesh screen to aid in keeping substrate out of the false bottom. Sometimes it's tricky to situate how you want it, but just wiggle it around for a bit and I'm sure you'll figure it out. At this point, I like introducing the cleanup crew right after the mesh barrier. Springtails are usually bred in crushed lumpwood charcoal, which is a very good purification layer to help keep a clean water cycle. After sloping the charcoal layer, it's substrate time. I'm using a pre-prepared mix that I get from my local pet store. This mix is very easy to make yourself though. Get some cocoa fiber, sand, sphagnum moss, aqua soil, and some leaf litter. The ratios will vary based on the flora and fauna that you intend to keep. After adding a generous layer of substrate and sloping it to give more depth as well as surface area, I like to start with the biggest piece of hardscape, which is actually an aquascaping principle, but almost all aquascaping principles can be applied to the terrarium hobby. After getting the two main hardscape elements in place, in this case a rock and little tiny piece of cork bark, I add some more substrate to make it seem like some rain eroded some topsoil, exposing a couple of rocks as well as some tree roots. I then give it a light spray down, just to lock the hardscape to the substrate. Now it's time for what has been my obsession for the past decade. Moss! I start with a couple of small tufts of what I believe to be hypnomoss. I tend to plant sparsely because I like the moss to, creep over everything and sort of take over, giving it a very nice aged look, sort of old anime Japanese countryside moss covered, structures and such. And such, yes, structures and such. Let's go with that. I add some pincushion moss near the cork bark. Next to that, I'm adding what is easily my favorite moss, fern moss, especially because of the texture that it provides. And the level of green, I find it has this lush green that not all mosses have. I'm also using some star moss, badge moss, and thread moss.
I fill in what I can of the space and give the little village some rain. Clean up the glass from the inside. I add a cutting of my favorite vining plant, Ficus pumila chrysophilia, or the oak leaf creeping fig. Now this little village can be situated in its resting place in the microverse. That was December of 2022. Here is what this little terrarium looks like as of the end of April of 2023. If you made it this far in the video, please know that I appreciate you and I hope that you learned something new. Until we meet again, my dear life forms, goodbye.